Thank you, ma'am, for doing this.
Thank you for the invite.
To start with, can you please tell me your name and what you do?
Yes, my name is Marina Markezic, and I'm the co-founder of the European Crypto Initiative, which is a non-profit association based in Brussels. We are basically doing policy and advocacy in Brussels, and we're focused on crypto assets regulation.
Very, very good. And so, can you tell me a little bit of what inspired you to start this organization?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm in this space for quite a long time. For the last 8 years, I've been working within this blockchain ecosystem.
Yeah.
And since the beginning, as being a lawyer legally trained, we have been asked a lot from the regulators from the beginning, what are crypto assets? At the beginning, there was a lot of discussion around ICOs as well. And basically, the inspiration came from trying to share information about this ecosystem, about this technology with regulators. And the last part of the inspiration was really when the European Union issued and published MiCA, the Markets and Crypto Assets Report regulation, and that part was really important because it basically is regulating crypto assets, their issuance, and crypto asset service providers in the whole European Union.
Wow, I don't know much about the European Union. I'm an American and I live in Asia, so it's like kind of the spot that I know the least about. When was this report released?
Yeah, so this report, basically the first proposal for the regulation was released 4 years ago, and that was something that was a first, I would say, draft for crypto regulation that would be happening all over Europe. Before that, the regulation was happening in specific member states like Germany, France, etc. And that's really the first attempt to regulate the whole market with one entry point and passporting. So whoever wanted to access the European Union market would have only one entry point, but then the regulation would be identical over the whole European Union market.
I see. And this report, you said in 2020 it was a draft. Has it been revised since then?
Yeah, so how policy work and policy procedure works in the EU is that the European Commission first writes the first draft, and then the Parliament writes the second draft, and we have the Council writing the third draft.
Oh, wow.
When all those drafts are finalized, they come together in a process that is called a trilogue. And during those trilogue processes, we negotiate what part of each draft will come in and will be part of the final one. So that's why it took us 4, almost 6 years to come to an ending point where MiCA would be applicable at the beginning of next year.
Okay, so it's past the trilogue then.
Yes, absolutely.
And it goes into effect next year.
So the first part is already applicable, the part that talks about stablecoins and that is regulating stablecoins.
Yes. I did hear about that. Okay.
Yeah.
That rings a bell. Okay, good. All right, so I'm an American, and obviously everyone knows that Donald Trump is going to be the next president in the U.S., and it's pretty much expected that he'll be pro-crypto, pro-Bitcoin, pro-crypto. And this seems to be a kind of a turning point in the U.S. from kind of very hostile towards crypto to maybe very cooperative. And so that's like the U.S.'s trajectory. I'm wondering, what is the EU like right now towards crypto? Is it hostile on one side, or is it very cooperative?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the European Union started very early into thinking about how to regulate crypto. I would say already 2018, 19. So this draft was worked on, and now it feels like we are in a kind of a post-crypto regulatory era where we do have this big regulation that is MiCA, and it is already finalized. So as I mentioned, next year it's going to be applicable, so it feels like the regulation is already here. What we need to see right now is how many projects and in which way they're going to be compliant, and if they would not be compliant as MiCA requires, are there going to be any enforcement actions and to which extent? And what is very specific in Europe is that we do not have I would say, a global or like a European SEC. We do have different national competent authorities that are really the ones that are supervising MiCA on their own in their own member states, and they're also granting the licenses. So it's really going to be the ones that are going to be the one supervising this.
Fascinating. What are the big European SECs then?
So like each
Germany's?
country,
France?
each country has one. So there are 27 of them, plus the 3 from the European Economic Area. So you can have 30 different NCAs, and there are also 30 different ways of where you would like to enter European Union, asking for a license. But yeah, definitely the most important are the ones from Germany, from France, from, let's say, Ireland is a very interesting.
Oh, really? Because of the tax haven status, or?
I would say so, but mostly because of the language.
Oh,
so
okay.
the companies that are entering Europe through, let's say, from America, from the UK, they feel very comfortable coming there from Ireland as well.
Yeah, and they probably have a legal framework.
Yes.
From the UK, which is basically used in the US. Okay. Cool. Now, so we don't know exactly how this is going to play out. Do you have a feel for? Is like the MiCA? Is it MiCA? Mm-hmm. Is the MiCA regulation, you think, like onerous? Is it heavy? Is it too much? Too little?
Yes.
Do you have any feeling for it? Is there a consensus on?
Absolutely. This is something I'm thinking about, every day for the last 5 years. So it is. I think it's a little bit of both. Like 3 very good things coming from MiCA are that it's not really heavy regulating layer 1s or blockchains. So in general, it's not regulating those at all. We do have a definition of the digital, basically, the DLT, which is broader than let's say blockchain, so it encompasses private and public, etc.
DLT would be like digital ledger technology?
Yes, but it's not really going into the details of that, so that is very good. We really want also as an organization to make sure that the layer 1, so the lowest layer of the stack as we call it, we do have the layer 1 and there are applications on top of it. The layer 1s should be really technologies that are not regulated, very similarly as the internet, for example.
Interesting. I like that. It's an interesting framework.
Yeah, and that is something that we have achieved in Europe. The second one is that I would say that most of the tokens that we know today are not securities, and they would be called crypto assets. It's a completely new asset class.
Oh, wow, interesting.
Yes, that we regulated for the first time in Europe, and so it has a specific framework, and this framework is the MiCA framework. The other ones that might be securities or financial instruments, as we call them in Europe, they do have the old framework already, that is a financial, basically, regulation that we existed before. And the third one is, if anyone wants to do token sales or list their token on an exchange, the process is, I would say, pretty lean. What you need to do is write a white paper that is a very specific format and very specific information. For example, very interesting thing, you have to do an assessment of the energy consumption of your token in the white paper as well. But the very important thing is that you only notify the authority about your issuance or about your listing. You don't need to wait for the reply, etc. The notification is important, and then whenever some changes are occurred, you do the notification of the changes as well and the updates. So those are the good things. The maybe things that are not very clear right now is a lot of things that are really defining what is within the scope of MiCA and what's outside of the scope of MiCA. So those are the things that we might think, from the beginning, that are not included, like the NFTs. NFTs, non-fungible tokens, are in theory excluded from MiCA, but basically the definition is so broad that we don't really know what NFTs are and to which extent they could be excluded from the scope of MiCA.
Wow, interesting.
Very interesting. And the other one is when we talk about decentralized projects and DeFi in general, again, in theory, they are excluded from MiCA. We have Recital 22 that talks about decentralization, but there is not much clarity to what that is and how the NCAs understand that. So there is a danger that there might be more projects included in the scope that we think they would.
Very, very cool. Oh, well, I'm excited to see how this plays out, I guess, next year. And did your organization take part in this whole process for the past 5-6 years?
Yes.
Yes?
That's actually very interesting. We were formed as an organization the day Mika was leaked and published.
Oh, wow. Cool.
So we were 3 founders that came from different member states working on policy before in France, Germany, and Slovenia. And then we basically realized that the main discussion is really going to happen in Brussels at the Parliament, Commission, and the Council. And this is where we formed this organization that basically started right away. It was COVID times, so having meetings was all online. But yeah, like we were very active during the last 5 years on Mika, but other topics as well, like the anti-money laundering.
I see. Great. So we're at DevCon now, and I saw that you had a booth, and a lot of people were coming up and talking to people at your booth. I'm wondering what kind of reception you got at this conference, because crypto people span the spectrum of like for regulation and against regulation. You know, you have the hardcore like libertarians, cypherpunks who are like say boo boo no, get out, and then you have kind of incorporated businesses like Coinbase or you know whomever who are very PayPal, for example, very for regulation. How has the reception been towards your organization at this conference?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. This is my 4th DevCon already, and
cool.
We have our founder. He was there already at the Ethereum #1 DevCon, so we were pretty familiar with this community. And I would say that the reception was really positive. And I would also say that the reception and perception of regulation and the importance of regulation is changing every year.
That's what I was going to ask next. Oh, please tell me more.
Absolutely. So as I said before, we do really think that when it comes to technology should not be regulated as in any way as a financial product, and we should be free to build in this way. But at the same time, of course, we are aware that there could be concerns when it comes to consumer protection and other concerns, and this is where regulation is inevitable. It happens in Europe. I think we're privileged to be one of the first ones to go through the whole process and learn so much by doing that, and I think the other jurisdictions will follow as well. There has been also very interesting reports from the international organizations like IOSCO and FATF. So I really believe that that is something that is inevitable and that will happen. I think the best we can do is really to contribute to the discussion and to contribute to this with papers, with meetings, really inform the regulators and be helpful as they are, when they are drafting those regulations.
Yes. So in your estimation then, just to rephrase a little bit, just to make sure it's clear to me, you've been to 4 DevCons, and from the beginning to now, people have warmed up to regulation more and more over the years?
I think warmed up would not really be the best term.
Okay. All right, please, how would you?
But I would say that we are growing up as an industry as well, and we are trying to understand what is the effect of whatever we are building to other, like institutions, other communities as well, and we're trying to understand better, how those things are working out. So I think we're more curious to understand what's going on, what is in the mind of regulators, what is in the mind maybe of other users and consumers, and how can we really achieve the thing that we both want in a very safe use of this technology. I think this is where the agreement is that we really want all the users to be using something that is not harmful.
Yeah, I agree. So I've been in the space since 2017, and I've been more pragmatic than a lot of my friends. So I also thought regulation was inevitable. And honestly, good regulation is good, right? Like you need to protect, like my mom, for example, right? And so I have personally noticed that people have become more accepting or like willing to tolerate conversations about regulation, right? I think it's ultimately if it's good, it'll be a good thing.
Absolutely. I would actually add that we had first a workshop at DevCon where we were hosting one of the regulators from the Japanese FSA. That was one of the best discussions we really had with regulators. And then we had a whole DeFi Hub day yesterday with 4 different workshops, and the amount of interest was really surprising. We had, the most interesting one was really about taxonomy. We're thinking about, what are the words that we're using in this space that might not be the best to describe what we're really doing. We are borrowing so many terms from the traditional financial world because this is what we know. But I think we need to be more creative and coming up with the words that are really describing what we're doing. And I think they are different from what we have seen previously in the financial sector. So I can tell you there's like a lot of people that are interested in that. And we were really very creative in doing this exercise yesterday.
Oh, that's awesome. Is there somewhere I can watch that? The taxonomy one? That sounds really interesting to me.
Yeah, the taxonomy one unfortunately was not recorded, but we are going to do, I can say this publicly, we're doing this exercise within EUCI as well. We wanted to discuss these topics and we wanted to bring some proposals up. And of course it's up to the community to agree or disagree, but also to give feedback. So I hope this is going to be a collaborative effort.
Oh man,
I
really want to hear more about this taxonomy thing. I love that kind of stuff. That's very, very cool. Yeah, awesome. So, 2 more questions.
Yeah, of course, I'm happy to answer.
What specific or decentralized applications or use cases is your organization kind of prioritizing and advocating for? So for example, you mentioned DeFi. Is that something that you are just kind of like first on your list? Or is it things like you mentioned earlier about Mika, like what falls under Mika or what doesn't, like NFTs?
Yes.
Do you have like a list of priorities?
Yeah. Absolutely. So I would say that the priorities are also defined by our members and by the ones that we are supporting, the industry that we are supporting. But very generally, Mika actually regulated centralized entities. It regulates different crypto as a service providers like exchanges, custodials, but at the same time regulates crypto assets like stablecoins and the issuance of crypto assets. So this is what was really something that the first draft also wanted to regulate. And then what we were, in a way, hoping was that decentralized use cases, at least at the beginning, would be excluded from Mika. And this is also why we suggested the article and the recital in Mika. And luckily, it was accepted. We do have that one. And I think that EUCI was a big contributor to the success of this being, in a way, again, a part of Mika. But right now, what we are dealing with is trying to understand what is the interpretation of this specific recital, specifically by national competent authorities.
Okay.
Because this is so new to everyone, to us, to regulators. We want to understand better in which direction this is going. And when you were asking about DeFi applications, I think that all of them are important and all of them should be taken into consideration when it comes to Mika. But I think specifically the ones that are in a way the ones that are the most popular, because this is where most of the consumers are actually
like your
in a way
Aves, your
focused.
Uniswaps, things like that, or
So I would say that it really goes into different directions. It can be DEXs, it can be some other applications as well. Yeah. So I would say, again, more on the application layer rather than on the tech stack layer.
Okay.
But it is something that it is important, and I think it's very innovative for everyone. So it's something new that we still need to discover what the consequences of Mika will be.
Interesting. So maybe you can tell me, it's thought because of Trump's being elected that Uniswap and Aave in particular might start turning on basically like dividends on tokens. Now that there's going to be a regime change in the SEC. If that happens, how would that be interpreted in the EU? Would those tokens then become securities, or would they still stay as the digital asset?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. So within what we understand in MiCA is that most of the tokens that we have right now, and everyone was striving to have something like a utility token, that was still a term coined in very early, but those tokens are mostly defined as crypto assets in Europe, so they would not be securities. If we are adding new functionalities to those, and it's something that we have not seen really, widely accepted in this space, I think we would need to do an additional assessment of that. And if they would be similar to financial instruments, that would then be in Europe defined as a financial instrument, which is, I would say, a pretty new approach. And I don't think that changes in MiCA or the financial regulation would be happening very soon in Europe. As you have seen, we are pretty slow in, the process is really long in Europe. So just taking 5 years to adopt a regulation, the changes could happen because we have one article in MiCA, it's very interesting, that is called the revision clause, and that one basically mandates the European Commission to write reports on MiCA, so any type of updates. But I still think that, again, Europe has done most of the job of regulating crypto assets. We have it, now we need to implement it.
Very cool. All right, last question. From your vantage point, where do you see this regulatory framework and more generally the EU's relationship with crypto evolving over the next, 2 to 3, 4 years?
So Europe has a new commission and a new parliament, so that's very interesting and pretty important. I think the new commission is really focusing on competitiveness, which is pretty important for Europe, and I think they're really trying to support the European Union industry, and a part of it is of course also digital finance and crypto industry. So I think that in the future we will see, again, more support, more maybe incentives to support local economy, and I think that crypto can be a big part of it. And I think what we also can expect is new players coming into the market because of legal certainty, and I would also expect that there would be more local projects being developed, again, just because of the certainty and their potential connection to the traditional financial institutions, which right now we see that is very interesting. It's something that a lot of projects are looking into, maybe adopting some of those technologies or even tokenizing some of their assets.
Very cool, yes. Just so I'm based out of Tokyo, as all the listeners know, and it was amazing to see how the Japanese regulators kind of fumbled it a couple of years ago, and everyone left. All the crypto companies left because of onerous taxes and some pretty harsh regulation. They did a 180. They took that away. They made all these frameworks very clear. And whether you think they're too strong or too weak is a different question, but the fact that they exist and it's clear for businesses. And man, I was surprised at all the incumbent traditional Web 2 companies in Japan that were going full in on crypto. So that regulatory clarity that you're speaking of will absolutely help a lot of new people, new companies, and old companies get into it.
Yeah, if I may add more to that, we have regulatory clarity, but we also have a framework that is unified all over Europe. So that is pretty different from what we had in the past when it comes to financial regulation, which is mostly done through a directive. It could be slightly different in each member state. So the definition of a financial instrument is slightly different in each member state, but the definition of a crypto asset, it should be identical all over Europe.
Cool. Very cool.
Yeah, so that is basically you're not coming to a German, French, or Hungarian market, you're really entering the whole EU.
Right, and so then for foreign companies, they would be a lot more likely to go in because then they can go in and it's basically a single market. They don't have to worry about having variations for the different markets.
Absolutely, and that was really the motivation of MiCA.
Oh, so cool. All right, well, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it, and I hope you keep doing this good work.
Thank you so much.